The latest figures indicate a growing divergence in the flight paths of recovery for global aviation, with Asia lagging other regions of the world. The 40-member Association of Asia-Pacific Airlines, or AAPA, says international passenger traffic remains in the doldrums, but travel markets in Asia particularly have been in stasis. Well, it says a gradual recovery has resumed in other regions. Now, AAPA's data show passenger traffic is still at a fraction of its pre-pandemic levels, but cargo demand has skyrocketed amid soaring e-commerce activity. Disruptions in major shipping ports like China have added to the allure of air freight. Now, AAPA says inequitable access to COVID-19 vaccines remains the biggest stumbling block to reopening borders in the region. Well, for more, we're joined by Matt Driskill. He is editor at Asian Airlines magazine, Asian Aviation. Well, Matt, COVID seems to be the differentiating factor in the aviation recovery in different regions of the world. What's your interpretation of the state of play here in Asia?
Basically, the state of play has been what it has been for the last year and a half, 2 years almost. Cargo, when the pandemic started, cargo started gradually taking off, and then it sort of exploded. Passenger traffic, international passenger traffic basically shut down. And that's really sort of the problem here in Asia. Singapore obviously has no domestic network that it can fall back on, unlike places like China or Vietnam or Japan or South Korea. So that's the biggest problem facing Singapore, for example. Hong Kong as well. Hong Kong is saved a little bit because of its China traffic. So that's really the difference. Part of the problem is, too, again, vaccination rates are uneven. A lot of this problem would go away if everybody would get vaccinated. I'm sure all the doctors like me saying that. But another part of the problem is you have different levels of quarantine and border controls and things like that that change from week to week or month to month. We've seen that in Australia, where states, the Australian states, you can't fly from Sydney to Melbourne or Melbourne to Canberra 1 week, and the next week they open them up. So it's this uncertainty that keeps the airlines from being able to plan appropriately, and it's costing them a lot of money.
Well, Matt, not only the pandemic, but we now have an international energy crisis on our hands. How much of an impediment to recovery is rising jet fuel prices?
I smile because it's kind of an interesting question. I mean, it's kind of like, would you rather be shot or stabbed is sort of the question. You know, would an airline CEO rather pay high fuel prices and be able to fly these planes, or would he rather have cheaper fuel prices and the planes are sitting on the ground? So, you know, it's a tough question to answer, because when an airplane sits on the ground, it's not making any money, and it's actually costing that airline, if they lease the plane, they still have to make those lease payments. If they bought it outright, they still have to pay the bank for it. So high fuel prices, I think right now, is probably, I would say, a secondary thought to what the airline CEO is thinking. They want to fly the planes. They want to get the planes back in the air. They want to, and the people want to get on the planes. There's a lot of pent-up travel demand. Every time a country, New Zealand, Australia, the U.S., China, every time a country has opened up to traveling, the flights have been booked full. So the oil prices, I mean, I think I was looking at the prices, they just hit $80 a barrel, which is good if you own stocks in oil companies. But I really think that the airlines, the CEOs, they want to get the planes back in the air, and then they'll worry about the fuel prices later, because right now they're not buying that much fuel.
Yeah, and Matt, Boeing forecasts a recovery in the next 2 or 3 years. Airbus seems to be around there too. Both companies are pitching for business at the China Air Show this week. What kind of demand will they find for their new planes, do you think?
Well, I think for the new planes, the new generation planes, which are going to be more fuel efficient, the engines are going to be burning anywhere from 5 to 10. You know, if you listen to the salesmen, they're going to be burning 20% less fuel, and they're going to save you a gazillion dollars. But if you don't listen to the salesman, there's some incremental benefits in what's going on with the new generation airplanes. They're lighter, they are more fuel efficient. And I think that, you know, there's an old saying, never let a crisis go to waste. And I think airlines, at least probably the smarter airlines, are refleeting the airline. They're getting more fuel efficient planes that are cheaper to operate, and they're using this as an opportunity to retire a lot of their older planes. So I think you'll see some demand. What's interesting is China is also trying to develop its own competitor airplanes to the 737 and the A320. It's called the C919 or 919, but part of the problem is that plane has actually been developed with a lot of Western technology. And as we all know, there's lots of problems going on between China and the West in terms of technology transfer. So we'll see how that plane develops and whether it actually emerges as a competitor to Boeing and Airbus.
All right, thank you. Matt Driskill from Asian Aviation.